Hey guys, welcome to the second part of this exciting visual effects tutorial for our Halloween horror special, The Ring. Before I keep talking, this is the final effect that we will be creating. In the first part of this tutorial, we took this boring shot of some trees in the park and turned it into a really creepy forest scene complete with murder well. You can check out part 1 of this tutorial by clicking on this cool floating link up here in the top right hand corner. In this video, part 2, I will show you how to composite a green screen shot of Celina from Fables and Fashion into this creepy forest scene to make it appear as if she's actually crawling out of the well. We will then add some cool TV damage, noise and distortion effects to make the whole shot look like it's a low quality video being played back on a rather crummy CRT TV, just like in the original movie for The Ring. This is going to be an intermediate tutorial and I will assume that you're familiar with all of the basic concepts for Adobe After Effects like keying, adjustment layers and pre-composing elements. If you are just getting started, I highly recommend you check out some of my beginner tutorials for After Effects first. But enough of me talking, let's jump right into the tutorial. Here I have a brand new empty composition. I already have the creepy forest background image that we created in the last part of this tutorial imported into After Effects. As always, you can find download links to the footage for this tutorial in the description of the video if you want to follow along. To get started, drag the forest scene image into your composition. Obviously, this is just a static image, so there isn't anything moving just yet. Let's first add Samara into the scene, crawling out of the well in the middle of the forest. Here's a video of Samara, played by Celina from Fables and Fashion, in the middle of our green screen setup. We actually tried to replicate the shape of the well in the forest using my couch. This allowed Celina to climb over the edge of the couch as if she were crawling out of the well. It gives us something to interact with and it ensures that this clip can be composited realistically onto the well in the forest scene. Notice that in this video we actually have Celina crawling backwards over the couch, back into the well. If you watched the original scene from The Ring, you will notice that the footage of Samara coming out of the well is actually reversed. This gives this scene an extra creepy edge and I wanted to do the same. Secondly, and this I did not watch out for properly, is that my couch is rounded and so Celina's hair drapes over the end of the couch. This does not match up with the flat forest floor in our scene and once Celina is too far out of the well, this green screen shot will no longer align with our forest scene. I avoided this problem by cutting from Celina being halfway out of the well to her already out of the well, stumbling towards the camera with one of those creepy twitch transitions. Let's get green screening. First, zoom in and mask out the area around Celina, cutting out anything that is not shot against the green screen. Now search for and apply the key light effect to this clip. Use the color picker to select the green color of this screen to remove most of it. Obviously, this is not a very clean key, you can still see the shape of the couch, simply because this was a bit of a budget setup for a green screen shot. But that's easy enough to fix. Switch the view property of the key light effect from final result to screen matte. Here you can clearly see how much random stuff is included in our matte, which is represented by all of the gray areas. Expand the screen matte tab and then go and increase the clip back property to color out all of the dark green areas around Celina. If we zoom in, you can see that there's now quite a bit of clipping happening, especially on Celina's hair, so go back to the key light effect and lower the clip white property until Celina's shape is a nice, solid white. Now switch the view property of the key light effect back to final result. Bam! We now have a nicely green screened clip of Celina crawling over my couch. Out of the well. Well, you notice the clip obviously still shows Celina crawling back into the well. We need to reverse the layer so it appears as if Celina is crawling out of the well instead. For this, simply right-click onto the layer and from the context menu select Time Reverse Layer. Let's play this back. Yep, nice and creepy. Time to composite this clip properly into our scene. Grab the edges of the clip and shrink it down so that it fits into our scene size-wise. Place the clip right on top of the opening of the well and scale it so that it perfectly fits into our forest scene. Ooh, starting to look nice. I think the shot of Celina is still a little bit too big for my liking. Let's shrink the layer down just a little bit more and reposition it as required. Let's zoom out and check out what we have. Yep, awesome! I can totally see how this is gonna work. Of course, this right here is the moment where Celina's hair on the ground does no longer look realistic because the couch on which we shot this was too rounded at the bottom. We will simply work around that by doing a cut right at this point in time. Before we get to that though, let's blend Celina better into this scene. The first step is color correction. Search for and apply the curves effect to the layer. Go over into the blue channel and push it up by a lot to give the footage a strong blue tint. Then hop over into the green channel and increase the midtones as much as you need to match up the colors of Celina with the color of the forest background. About here seems right. I think the clip is also a little bit too dark and I want Celina to stand out a little bit more, so hop over to the RGB channel and push it up a little bit. This should do. Let's play back our current comp. Cool, I like it. Another thing we need to do to composite Celina more realistically into the scene is to add some fog over her. Remember how we added a layer of haze into the forest in the last part of this tutorial? Celina should really be sitting behind that fog layer, and we could have separated the forest and the fog layers in Photoshop. However, we can also simply add a bit of a gradient over Celina in After Effects to blend her better into the scene. For this, search for the 4-color gradient effect and apply it to the clip. Now, this always reminds me of something from an Apple commercial, but it's basically a 4-colored gradient defined by these 4 points here that we can move around. First off, align these 4 points in a vertical line directly over Celina. We want to create a fog-colored gradient that will match the background forest scene and help us blend Celina into the shot. Go to the effect settings and set the color of the top point of the gradient to black. Then use the color picker to select the bright forest fog color for the second point, and then select a dark blue color from the forest shot for the third. The bottom point, again, can simply be black. Finally, go back to the 4-color gradient effect and set the blend mode of the gradient to screen. Bam! We now have a cool fog-colored gradient overlaying Celina, and we can adjust the points of this effect as needed to match this gradient up with the gradient of the forest background image. Cool! If you zoom in, you can really see the difference that this gradient effect makes. Celina is looking much more integrated into the shot. Maybe I'll tweak the gradient just a tad to soften the opacity at the top a little. Let's play this back. Now that's starting to look pretty cool. Okay, time to deal with the issue of the hair rolling over the round edge of the couch. What I want to do is cut at the right point in time where Celina is halfway out of the well and transition to a shot where she is standing and slowly walking towards the camera, right about here. Trim down the layer of Celina coming out of the well and let's add another shot of her into the scene. Here I have another shot of Celina in front of a green screen. This time she's doing her creepy stumbling walk towards the camera. We will integrate this green screen shot using the exact same techniques I just showed you, so I will really speed through this one. First off, mask out the green screen area of Celina. Then apply the keylight effect and tweak your screen mat to remove all of the parts of the green screen from this shot. Scale down the layer to place Celina correctly in your forest scene just in front of the well, stumbling towards the camera. Make sure the clip starts exactly at the moment when the clip of Celina coming out of the well finishes, so you have a nice and clean transition between the two. One thing to watch out for is Celina's dress. If we zoom in here for a moment, you will notice that her dress is overlapping the edge of the green screen by a little bit. Here it is being cut off by the mask that I added. To fix this issue, you will have to add some keyframes to the mask path and animate it to follow the shape of Celina's dress. Let's add a few keyframes so that the mask follows the edge of the dress as required. Cool, let's play back the effect we have so far, including the transition of Celina crawling out of the well to her walking towards the camera. That's not bad, but I do feel the image of Celina is a bit too big when she walks towards the camera. Let's scale it down just a little bit more. Cool, that looks better. Now, and again I will speed through this because you've seen this all before, use the curves effect to correct the color of this clip to match our forest scene. I'm also going to brighten this shot up a little bit because I felt Celina looked a little bit too dark. Then apply the same 4-color gradient to this layer and match the gradient up with a fog in the forest scene. Once we're done, this is what it looks like. Cool, that looks great! Let's zoom out and play this back one more time in full resolution. Awesome! The only thing I will tweak is I will move the clips of Celina forward a little bit in time, as I want a second or two with just an empty well in the scene before she starts to crawl out of it. Now, while this looks pretty cool already, let's add all of the TV noise and twitch effects that will finish off this cool horror scene. First, let's pre-compose all of our layers. Select all of them and then right-click any of them and select Pre-compose from the context menu. I will call this comp Creepy Woods Comp and then hit OK. Go to a time where Celina has made it out of the well and then zoom in a little bit. Let's add some ghosting to the shot. This is really simple. Duplicate your Creepy Woods Comp layer and rename the copy to Ghosting 1. Reduce the opacity of the Ghosting 1 layer to around 30% and then simply offset the image a little bit horizontally by dragging it to the right. This will create the impression that we're watching this video on a crummy old TV. Maybe I'll reduce the offset just a little bit since we will be adding another ghosting layer soon. Before we do that, however, there is one thing we need to sort out. Zoom out and disable the visibility of the Creepy Woods Comp. Because we dragged the Ghosting 1 layer over to the right, we now have a little bit of a gap on the left-hand side for this layer. You can see that much more clearly if you increase the opacity of the Ghosting 1 layer back to 100%. Not to worry, this is really easy to fix. Simply search for and apply the motion tile effect to the Ghosting 1 layer. Jack up the output width property to fill in the image to the left and the right. Finally, tick the mirror edges checkbox and the small gap on the left side will be gone. Let's set the opacity of the Ghosting 1 layer back to around 30% and re-enable the visibility of the Creepy Woods Comp layer. Cool, we're ready to add another layer of ghosting. Duplicate the Ghosting 1 layer. Reduce the opacity of the Ghosting 2 layer down to maybe around 15% and again offset the layer a little bit further towards the right. This is starting to look nice and spooky. Now obviously we don't want to see this ghosting effect all of the time. We kind of just want it to flicker on and off like there's something wrong with the TV that's playing back this video. To control the flicker of the ghosting effect and of the other TV damage effects that we will be adding, we will use expression controls and some clever expressions. If you haven't dealt with expressions or expression controls in Adobe After Effects before, I highly recommend checking out my beginner tutorials on those topics first. I will put links to these tutorials into the description of the video. Create a new solid layer to hold our expression control. I'm going to call this layer Control. Now we don't need to see this layer, so disable its visibility. Then search for and apply the slider effect to the Control layer. We will use this slider to control the frequency with which the TV damage effects will be visible. First, we will link it to the ghosting effect we already created, but we will also use it later to have the image flicker up and down randomly, again, just like with an old TV. For now, set the slider to 100. This will ensure that the TV damage effects that we will link to the slider will be visible 100% of the time, and it just makes it easier for us to work with them. Now, since we will use the Pick Whip tool to link our expressions to the slider, expand the control layer in your layers window to reveal the slider effect. Then go over to the Ghosting 1 layer and alt-click onto the stopwatch icon next to the opacity property to add an expression. In the expression editor type, random, open bracket, 100, close bracket, and then a left arrow, which is the less than sign, and then use the Pick Whip tool to select the value of the slider to insert it into the expression and then finish the expression with $value:0. This expression states that if a randomly generated number between 0 and 100 is less than the value of the slider, the layer will show with its current opacity, otherwise the opacity will be set to 0. The slider now controls the percentage chance with which the ghosting effect will be visible. Now I know this is a mouthful, so let me show you how this works. Disable the Ghosting 2 layer for now. Zoom in so that you can clearly see the ghosting effect and reduce the slider value to around 40. If you play back the clip now, 40% of the frames at random will show the ghosting effect. Reduce the slider value to around 10. Now rewind the clip and play it back again. Notice how much less ghosting is occurring? This time only 10% of the frames will show the ghosting effect. We can now use the slider to control how damaged our TV appears, and we will link the slider to all of the other TV damage effects as well. First off, to the other ghosting layer. Re-enable the visibility of the Ghosting 2 layer. Go and add an expression to its opacity property. Since we always want both ghosting layers to show at the exact same time, use the pick whip icon to select the opacity property of the ghosting 1 layer to insert it into the expression. Finish the expression with /2, which is just divide by 2. This will set the opacity of the ghosting 2 layer to half the opacity of the ghosting 1 layer. Easy! Let's zoom out and play back our comp. Cool! It looks much better with both ghosting layers on. Since one TV damage effect isn't enough, let's add some really cool vertical offset effects to the entire scene. Select all layers in your composition and then press U to collapse all of the currently expanded properties. Create a new adjustment layer and call it Offset. Now, it doesn't really matter whether this layer sits at the very top or just below your control layer in the comp. Next, search for and apply the Offset effect to the Offset adjustment layer. This effect, what a surprise, offsets the contents of your layer, and we want to use it to randomly offset our entire scene vertically. Since we will link this effect against the slider expression control, make sure the control layer is expanded so that you can see the slider effect. Then Alt-click on the stopwatch icon for the Shift Center to property of the offset effect. In the expression editor, type open square bracket value open square bracket 0 close square bracket comma random open bracket 100 close bracket and then the left arrow, which is the less than sign, and then use the pick whip tool to select the slider value to insert it into the expression. Finish off your expression with question mark value open square bracket 1 close square bracket plus random open bracket 500 close bracket colon value open square bracket 1 close square bracket and close another square bracket. This expression uses the slider control to randomly offset the scene vertically by up to 500 pixels. If we scrub through our composition, you can see how the screen twitches vertically. I think the twitching is almost a bit too frequent. Let's go back to the expression and change the first call of the random function to be random 200 instead of random 100. This will make it half as likely for the twitches to occur. Yep, that's much better. We really don't want to give our audience eyeball bleed due to excessive jittering of the footage. Finally, go into the settings for the offset effect and set the blend with original property to 50%. This will soften out the appearance of the vertical offset effect and make it a little bit less abrupt. Let's play back our comp to see what this looks like. Nice! Since we have everything nicely tied together, we can now use this single slider expression control to determine the frequency at which these TV damage effects occur. Let's make use of this and animate the slider to have some parts of the clip more noisy than others and emphasize certain moments within the shot. For example, I don't want any twitching at the start of the clip, so let's start the slider value out at 0. Then maybe jack it up a little bit to around 5% just as Celina starts to crawl out of the well. During the transition from Celina coming out of the well to her walking towards the camera, I really want a lot of twitching, so maybe we'll set the slider to around 20. After the transition, I will reduce the slider value back to around 10 to reduce the amount of flickering. Then I'll let the slider slowly decline down to 5 towards the end of the clip. Let's play this back. Yep, I'm pretty happy with the twitch effects. However, we're not done yet. I still want some general TV noise and interlacing effects, and I also want to make the whole shot look a lot more dramatic. Let's start with the noise. Create a new adjustment layer at the top of your composition and call it Noise. Zoom in a little bit so you can see the noise we're going to add a little bit clearer. Search for and apply, you guessed it, the noise effect to the adjustment layer. Jack up the noise to around 10 to 15% and untick the Use Color Noise option. Our shot now has a really nice grainy look. I still feel there's a bit too much twitching going on towards the end. Let's quickly hop back to the slider expression control for a moment and reduce the value of the slider towards the end to 5 instead of 10. Yeah, that looks better. Now let's create some cool interlacing effects. For this, create a new solid layer at the very top of your composition. I'm going to call mine Interlacing. Search for and apply the turbulent noise effect to this layer. We will reshape this turbulent noise pattern to look more like long horizontal interlacing lines from an old CRT screen. For this, go over into the effect settings of the turbulent noise effect and expand the transform property. Open up the scale property and you will see that by default it actually scales uniformly. Untick the uniform scaling checkbox to be able to stretch the noise at will. Finally, increase the scale width property to its maximum and reduce the scale height to its minimum value. Scrubbing through the effect, you will see that the turbulent noise is a static image, it doesn't actually animate. Now, you could animate the evolution property, but animating the evolution property actually looks a little bit too organic, it looks too smooth to be an old CRT TV. Instead, we will animate the offset turbulence property as that, as you can see, shifts the horizontal lines in a way much more resembling an old TV. Add an expression to the offset turbulence property and in the expression editor simply type open square bracket 0, time star 100 close square bracket. Bam! We now have nicely animated interlacing lines. To blend this layer into our scene, change the blend mode of the interlacing layer to classic color burn. Wow, that's a little bit too dark, we can hardly see our scene. Open up the opacity of the interlacing layer and reduce it to around 15%. That looks much better. I feel that the interlacing lines are a little bit too hard to see, so go back to the turbulent noise effect and jack up the contrast property to something huge like 1000. Finally, let's lower the opacity of the interlacing layer just a little bit more, maybe to around 10%. Now that looks cool. You can really see the impact this interlacing effect has on the scene, especially if you zoom in a little bit. Last step, I do want to tweak the color of the overall scene just a little bit for dramatic effect. Go back and add another adjustment layer to the very top of your composition. Let's call this one color grading. Search for and apply the curves effect to this adjustment layer. Add some contrast into the RGB channel by pushing up the highs and by reducing the lows a fair bit. This will make the scene look a lot more dramatic. In my opinion, the image has turned out a little bit too blue, so go over to the green channel and increase it just a little bit. How you want to color grade your final effect is really down to personal taste. Let's go back to the beginning of our composition and I think I'll make it even more dramatic and increase the contrast of the cursor effect even further. There, done. All that's left to do is play back and enjoy your final girl out of the well horror effect. And there you have it! Going from a simple photo of some trees in a park to a creepy girl out of the well visual effect shot ready to be used for your next horror movie project. And don't worry, I will cover all of the other visual effects from our Ring Halloween special in my upcoming tutorials. I really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you have any comments, questions or suggestions, just leave them in the section below. Please remember to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button up there. Hit that like button and share the video around, it really helps out a lot. And if you're hungry for more, you can also find and follow me on Facebook, Twitter or on Google+. Until next time, I will see you later.